Every Shopify theme has exactly one file deciding what shows up in that big global theme settings panel: fonts, colors, corner radius, spacing, all of it. But where does the data in that one file actually end up once a merchant changes it? Parts 4 and 5 walk Dawn's sections and blocks. Today we go up one level, into config/settings_schema.json, and follow its declared settings all the way into the real CSS that ships to every visitor's browser. Welcome back to Shopify Development Deep Dive. Settings_schema.json lives in a themes config folder, and it's the single file that controls every option a merchant sees under theme settings in the editor, not a section settings, not a block settings, but the theme-wide ones like body font, heading font, page width, and every color scheme. Today we read Shopify's own real documentation for how that file is structured, and then we read Dawn's real layout file, theme.liquid, to see exactly what those declared settings turn into once a page actually renders. 5 things by the end of this part. Where settings_schema.json actually lives, and how its theme-wide settings differ from the settings a single section or block can declare on its own. The real theme_info object that every theme must include, and which attributes it requires. Why this one particular file, unlike most other theme JSON files, is allowed to contain comments and trailing commas. How Dawn's real theme.liquid layout file reads settings.type_header_font and settings.type_body_font straight out of that schema. And how a single schema-declared color scheme group becomes an entire family of CSS custom properties, one full set per scheme, computed live in Liquid. Here's the whole pipeline in 5 stages. Settings_schema.json declares a font picker setting, say, the heading font. A merchant opens the theme editor and picks a font from that setting. Liquid exposes that choice as settings.type_header_font, a real font object with its own properties. Theme.liquid then runs that object through the font_face and font_modify filters to build the actual @font face rules the browser needs. And the end result lands as a real CSS custom property, --font heading family, used site-wide all without a single rebuild or redeploy, because it's just Liquid re-rendering server-side on every request. A short list again. Part 4's tour of Dawn's config folder, plus the schema block we've now seen in parts 1, 3, 4, and 5, all apply directly today. Basic comfort reading a for loop, and simple CSS custom properties. The --variable -name syntax is really all you need. A local clone of Dawn helps if you want to follow file by file, but every path is named as we go, so it isn't required. And no prior Shopify theme development experience is needed at all. This is the real theme_info object Shopify's own documentation requires at the top of every settings_schema.json file. Its name attribute must literally be the string theme_info. Theme name, theme author, and theme version are all required. And a theme must include either a support URL or a support email, but never both. Shopify's docs are explicit that including both, or leaving out any other required attribute, is treated as an error. Here's something genuinely unusual, straight from Shopify's own docs. Settings_schema.json is one of the few theme files where you're allowed to write real/* comments and leave a trailing comma after the last item, both shown right here. Files merchants don't hand edit, like templates, section groups, settings_data.json, and locale files, don't get this privilege and won't persist either one. And notice the category name itself, t:/settings_schema.colors.name. That's a translation key, not a literal string, resolved through the theme's locale files. This is real, current code from Dawn's theme.liquid, the file every single page on a Dawn storefront renders through. Settings.type_header_font and settings.type_body_font are both font objects, straight from a font picker setting declared in settings_schema.json. Each one exposes a .system ? method true if the merchant picked one of the browser's built-in system fonts. Only if at least one of the two fonts is a real, downloadable web font does this pre-connect hint to Shopify's font CDN get added at all. Once that font object exists, theme.liquid puts real filters to work on it. Font_modify takes the merchant's chosen body font and derives a bold variant, and separately an italic variant. Right here in Liquid, no second font picker setting needed for either one. Font_face then turns each of those font objects into a real @font face CSS rule, with font display swap set so the page text doesn't stay invisible while the font downloads. One schema setting, 4 real font face rules generated from it. This is the real loop behind every color scheme a merchant sees in the editor. Settings.color_schemes is a single color scheme group setting declared in settings_schema.json, but at render time it behaves like an array 1 entry per scheme the merchant has configured. For every scheme, Liquid reads its own settings.background and settings.text colors, pulls out the red, green, and blue components individually, and writes them into a .color dash in the scheme's ID CSS class. Add a fourth color scheme in the editor, and this exact same loop just emits a fourth CSS class, automatically. Not every setting needs a for loop or a filter chain, most of them are this simple. Settings.page_width, a plain range setting, gets divided by 10 and written straight into a --page width custom property. Settings.buttons_radius and settings.card_corner_radius, two more range settings, become --buttons radius and --product card corner radius directly. This single root block in theme.liquid is genuinely the single biggest consumer of settings_schema.json's declared values anywhere in Dawn. Stated as one single merchant action, they open the theme editor and pick a new heading font. The font picker setting was already sitting there in settings_schema.json, waiting. Settings.type_header_font, the live Liquid object, updates immediately. Theme.liquid's font_face and font_modify calls rebuild the @font face rules using the new font. And the --font heading family custom property picks up the change on every single page the next time it renders. No deploy, no build step, no cache to bust, because Liquid renders theme.liquid fresh, server-side, on every request. A few things trip people up here. Settings_schema.json only controls theme-wide settings. The section's own settings, like the ones we saw in parts 4 and 5, live entirely inside that section's own schema block instead, completely separate from this file. The theme_info object's support fields are exclusive where you include theme_support_URL or theme_support_email, and including both, per Shopify's own docs, is treated as an error. JSON comments and trailing commas genuinely only work inside settings_schema.json itself. Try the same syntax in a template, in settings_data.json, or in a locale file, and it gets silently dropped instead of erroring. And a color scheme group setting isn't stored as a literal array inside the schema file, it only behaves like an iterable array through settings.color_schemes once Liquid renders it. Pulling it together. Settings_schema.json is the single file behind every theme-wide option a merchant sees in the theme settings panel, separate entirely from section and block settings. Its required theme_info object needs a name, an author, a version, and exactly one support contact method, never both. It's the one theme file Shopify allows real JSON comments and trailing commas in, specifically because merchants and theme authors edit it directly. And Dawn's real theme.liquid is the proof of what all of that becomes in practice. Font settings, color scheme groups, and plain range settings, all turn straight into the CSS custom properties every visitor's browser actually uses. Change a setting in the editor, and the storefront updates instantly, with no rebuild and no redeploy, because Liquid renders it all fresh, server-side, every time. That's the real journey from one declared setting in settings_schema.json all the way to a live CSS custom property on every page of a Dawn storefront. Part 7 moves to the developer side of things, and opens the Shopify CLI's own real source code to see exactly how theme development, live reload, and deploy actually work under the hood. If you want the rest of this series as it publishes, subscribe now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Part 7.